Everyone knows campus prince Ethan Blake has absolutely no interest in girls. So when Ethan's mother contacted me, I was absolutely floored. With my bewildered expression, she slid a bank card across the table and smiled sweetly. 3 million, help my son with his condition. The cafe went completely quiet. This unexpected fortune made my head spin. That elegant gold card on the table screamed expensive luxury. I forced myself to look elsewhere. Excuse me, beautiful lady, isn't this a bit inappropriate? Look at me already babbling like an idiot. Ethan's mother giggled. Such charming words, you're exactly what I need. I remained confused, so I bravely asked, why choose me? Although Ethan and I shared a dorm room, we barely acknowledged each other's existence. At this topic, Ethan's mother sighed deeply. Ethan suffers from touch starvation disorder. Through her detailed explanation, I discovered Ethan's secret struggle. Simply unimaginable. My distant, cold roommate had this psychological condition. If memory served, this privileged guy also had extreme cleanliness obsessions. Getting me to force physical intimacy with Ethan was like hitting the jackpot. Hilarious. Could I actually hit the jackpot myself? Definitely not. My fingers slowly crept toward the card's edge. Broke people can't afford principles. I sat up straight. Supporting others defines today's generation. Ethan's mother appeared ashamed. I'm not trying to offend you with money. What? Why was my guardian angel apologizing? I simply wanted to maintain some dignity. Glancing over, Ethan's mother seemed ready to retrieve her card. I swiftly pocketed the bank card, adopting a noble expression. For Ethan's well-being, I'll accept any shame. Ethan's mother appeared genuinely touched. She ducked her head, shoulders shaking gently. Having such a caring roommate is his fortune. Nearly 2 months remained before classes resumed. Following previous patterns, Ethan rarely stayed in our room. How should I approach Ethan? I couldn't exactly embrace him publicly, right? Opening our dorm door, fresh mints and hit me immediately. Ethan's skin still glistened from his recent shower. Seriously, he bathed minimum 3 times daily. Such dedication, Ethan stood there topless. Honestly, his build was mesmerizing. Those hip lines were sharper than my future goals. I confidently stepped forward, gradually moving closer. Somehow sensing me, Ethan partially turned. His expression screamed, keep your distance. I intelligently halted my approach. Obviously not from fear. Simple curiosity, really unbelievable. How does a normal temperature human project sub-zero vibes? No surprise those girls labeled Ethan their ice king. I nervously attempted friendliness. I've got tiramisu. Anyone interested? Ethan appeared ready to decline when interrupted. Our room captain, chatting with his girlfriend, emerged. Absolutely. Marcus, dominating his video game, added, reserve one for me. Everyone knew about my cafe job. Our captain once bought my dessert for his girlfriend. Ever since, he's advertised my baking talents everywhere. I cautiously observed Ethan. Care to taste it? Homemade with pristine ingredients. Ethan, having finished dressing, hesitated briefly. Alright, thanks. The dessert worked better than anticipated for breaking tension. I could now boldly accompany Ethan to study sessions. Ethan seemed unbothered by my constant presence. He'd even begun purchasing my breakfast. Truly a gorgeous, generous person. However, after days of watching, I detected nothing abnormal about Ethan. Library's 5th level, gorgeous sunset streaming through windows. I sneakily studied Ethan, completely absorbed in his textbooks. Perhaps Ethan's mother misunderstood her son's situation? My phone buzzed twice. I discreetly checked underneath the table. Use affection to break through his walls. Reading the employer's text, I went speechless. Was Ethan some kind of onion? Strip away his emotional barriers layer by layer? Still, $3 million intelligence couldn't be mistaken, right? She couldn't actually fancy me. I must be slacking off. Time for serious self-evaluation. Shortly, an opportunity to demonstrate my commitment appeared. Friday meant dawn to dusk classes. After surviving lectures, I sprinted back for a shower. Our room captain lived off campus with his girlfriend. Marcus, a typical rich boy, would obviously spend tonight clubbing. Just Ethan and I remained in the dorm. I shut off the water, and the bathroom was saturated with a sharp mint aroma. To better connect with Ethan, I targeted his personal tastes, starting with matching body wash fragrance, then identical phone accessories. I'd even browsed for his clothing style but couldn't afford anything. Just some struggling student after all. Hopefully Ethan would recognize my dedication and not assume I was some desperate copycat. Emerging from the bathroom, Ethan lounged against our balcony rail, smoking. I stood frozen. Ethan breathing. Out smoke resembled some beautiful ice sculpture. Noticing movement, Ethan glanced back. His cigarette fingers quivered almost invisibly. That moment, sunset colors painted his earlobes. Where are your clothes? What ridiculous statement was Ethan making? I obviously wore underwear. This was completely deliberate. I'd researched extensively. Treating touch starvation requires triggering and fulfilling their cravings. Despite being thoroughly modest, before exiting the bathroom, I surrendered to financial motivation. I casually strolled toward Ethan. My pale torso became fully visible to Ethan's eyes. Ethan crushed his cigarette, wordlessly turning away. His attention shifted toward the darkening horizon. Come on, man, with that willpower you could conquer anything. I steeled myself and naturally lost my balance. My intention was simple forearm contact. But Ethan's skull apparently had rear vision. Suddenly, I found myself pressed against his chest. About to lift my head, I felt Ethan's frame trembling subtly. Hold on, was Ethan finally experiencing symptoms? As I considered inquiring, I recalled something my friend Daniel mentioned. Daniel, 3 years my senior, worked at a private medical facility. He explained wealthy kids typically hide their vulnerabilities, particularly concerning their personal shortcomings. I needed to consider whether Ethan concealed his psychological issues because he feared discovery. I remained quiet but secretly intensified my grip. Ethan's uncertain voice drifted down. Are you feeling sick? Right then, I acknowledged Daniel's wisdom once again. Preserving Ethan's dignity, I exhaled sadly. Yes, I have a condition. Ethan's startled eyes examined me thoroughly. His voice revealed genuine concern. What kind? How severe? Fine, fine, Ethan, you're incredibly stubborn, especially verbally. I admitted defeat, manageable, just that I suffer without physical touch. Ethan showed more care than I'd anticipated. The next morning, he'd arranged a therapist consultation for me. Seriously, dude, you're performing better than me? I gracefully refused Ethan's thoughtful gesture. Ethan frowned at me. What happens during your episodes? I clutched Ethan's sleeve, looking pathetic. That's why I need you, brother. During our interactions, I'd learned Ethan enjoyed hearing me say brother. Ethan's face showed mixed emotions. Elegant fingers gently tugged my cheek. He breathed out, I'm right here. Quickly, he shifted topics. Ethan started interrogating me. When did this start? My throat tightened a little under Ethan's steady gaze. When did this start? The question wasn't sharp, but it felt like it cut through all the noise I'd been hiding behind. I blinked once, then shrugged in the most casual way I could manage. I don't know. Long time ago, I guess. I just don't do well without contact. Ethan didn't immediately respond. That alone was unusual. He always responded, if not with words, then with distance. Now he was standing too close for his usual standards, like he'd forgotten his own rulebook. His fingers still held my sleeve, but the grip had loosened. Does it hurt? He asked finally. I almost laughed. That wasn't the question I expected from someone who acted like human proximity was a contamination risk. It's not exactly pain, I said carefully. More like, everything feels too far away, like I'm not really part of anything. Ethan's eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. For a moment, he looked away toward the window. The sunset had faded into a dull blue, the kind that made the room feel quieter than it should have been. You shouldn't have to rely on someone else for that, he said. Yeah, I replied quickly. That's what I told myself too. Didn't work. Silence settled again, but it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't empty, it was loaded. Ethan finally released my sleeve. I thought that was it. The usual ending. Distance restored, walls rebuilt, everything back to normal. But then he said, almost reluctantly, so what do you want from me? That question landed heavier than all the others. I opened my mouth, then paused. The honest answer felt dangerous, so I chose the safer version. Just help me not feel like I'm disappearing, I said. Ethan's expression tightened slightly, like he didn't like what he was hearing, but couldn't dismiss it either. You're being reckless, he muttered. I'm being desperate, I corrected. That earned me a long look. Then, unexpectedly, Ethan turned away and grabbed his jacket from the chair. Put a shirt on, he said flatly. Is that a medical recommendation or a personal complaint? Both, he replied without hesitation. I stared at him. That was the closest thing to humor I had ever heard from Ethan Blake. He paused at the door, hand on the handle, then added without looking back. If you're serious about therapy, I'll go with you. I froze. You? I echoed. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Then, quieter than before. I want to understand what my mother thinks she sees. And just like that, the ice wasn't gone, but it had started to crack. The next morning, I woke up to something I didn't expect. Silence. Not the usual dorm silence, but the kind that felt intentional. Like the room had been carefully arranged to avoid disturbing anything, especially me. Ethan was already up. Of course he was. He was sitting at his desk, laptop open, posture straight, as if sleep was just another optional human activity he hadn't subscribed to. He wore a clean black shirt, sleeves neatly rolled once. No cigarette, no distance theatrics, just controlled stillness. I sat up slowly. You're actually going to therapy with me? He didn't look back. I said I would. That's kind of insane. Noted. That shut me up. A few seconds passed before he added, appointment is at 3. I blinked. You already booked it? You were going to procrastinate. I couldn't even argue with that. By the time we reached the clinic, I started reconsidering every life decision that led me here. The building was too clean, too quiet. The air smelled faintly of lavender and judgment. Ethan walked beside me like he belonged there more than the building itself. People in the waiting area actually moved out of his way without realizing it. I leaned closer and whispered, you look like you're here to sue the hospital. I could be, he replied calmly. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. Before I could respond, a voice called Ethan's name. Not the receptionist. A woman in a white coat stepped forward, clipboard in hand, eyes flicking between us. Then she paused. Oh, she said slowly. So this is the roommate. Something in her tone made my stomach dip. Ethan's expression tightened. You know about this? She sighed like she'd been waiting for this exact disaster. Your mother called ahead. I turned my head sharply. Of course she did. Ethan didn't react outwardly, but I saw it, the smallest shift in his jaw. Controlled, contained, familiar. We were led into a consultation room. 2 chairs, 1 couch, too many plants trying to look reassuring. The therapist sat across from us and flipped open the file. Let's clarify something first, she said. Ethan, your mother described this as touch starvation disorder. That's not a clinical diagnosis. I nearly choked. It's not. Ethan exhaled through his nose. I told her that. The therapist nodded. However, difficulty with physical proximity, emotional detachment, and obsessive control over environment can point to underlying anxiety or trauma responses. Ethan didn't flinch, but I did, because that wasn't the Ethan I thought I knew. The therapist's gaze shifted to me. And you are here voluntarily? I hesitated. I mean, depends on your definition of voluntary. Ethan glanced at me. $3 million? I froze. You told him. I assumed transparency was important, Ethan said flatly. I was supposed to be mysterious about it. The therapist pinched the bridge of her nose. Okay, she said. We are starting over. 40 minutes later, I walked out feeling like my brain had been gently rearranged and put back slightly incorrectly. Ethan followed behind me, hands in his pockets. Neither of us spoke until we reached the steps outside. Then he said, "You're not doing this for money." It wasn't a question. I laughed awkwardly. I mean, originally? That's not what I mean. The wind moved between us. Loud cars passed somewhere far below the hill. Ethan looked at me directly for the first time since leaving the building. "You don't avoid people because you need touch," he said. "You avoid something else." I frowned. "And what's that supposed to be?" A pause. Then, quieter. "Being seen." That landed wrong in my chest. Not painful. Just accurate in a way I didn't like. I looked away first. "You're not a therapist." "No," he said. "But I notice things." Another pause. Then, unexpectedly, "I also noticed you lied in there." I stiffened. "About what?" Ethan's eyes didn't move. "About needing me." My heartbeat tripped. For once, he didn't sound cold. He sounded careful, like he was trying not to break something that had already started cracking. "I didn't lie," I said automatically. Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Then prove it." The air between us went still. And for the first time since this entire arrangement began, I realized this wasn't about his mother's money anymore. It was about what neither of us had actually been honest enough to name. The word prove lingered between us like a challenge neither of us had agreed to fully understand. I let out a short breath. "You make it sound like this is a courtroom." Ethan didn't move. "It kind of is." "That's dramatic." "It's accurate." I stared at him. He stared back. And somehow I was the one who looked away first again. We walked back toward campus in silence. Not the comfortable kind. Not the awkward kind either. It was the kind that felt like something was being written in real time, and neither of us had been given the script. Halfway across the pedestrian bridge, Ethan finally spoke again. "You said you don't do well without contact." "Yeah. Does it have to be me?" The question should have been simple. It wasn't. I stopped walking. "Why are you asking that?" I said carefully. Ethan kept going a few steps before realizing I wasn't beside him anymore. He turned back. "I'm trying to understand the boundary," he said. "There are boundaries now?" "There always were," he replied. "That was the problem. I just hadn't seen them." I leaned on the railing, watching traffic below. "It doesn't have to be you," I admitted. "It just became you." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, in processing. "That's not safe," he said. I laughed under my breath. Nothing about this started safe. He didn't argue, which somehow made it worse. Back in the dorm, Marcus's side of the room was already a disaster zone of snacks and gaming controllers, meaning he was definitely not coming back tonight. Ethan shut the door behind us. Click. The sound felt too final. I turned around. "So what now? You interrogate me daily until I unlock my childhood trauma?" Ethan set his bag down. "If necessary." That was a joke. "I'm aware." He walked past me toward the balcony, then paused. "I don't like being used," he said without turning around. That hit harder than it should have. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, because for the first time I wasn't sure I had a clean answer. I followed him out. The air outside was cooler, carrying the faint smell of rain from somewhere far off. Ethan leaned against the railing, eyes on the horizon. "You think this is manipulation?" I said quietly. "I think it started as one," he replied. "Fair, honest, uncomfortable." I exhaled. "And now?" He hesitated. That hesitation mattered more than anything else he'd said all day. "Now I think you don't know what you're doing either," he said. I blinked. "Wow, that's kind of insulting." "It's observational," he corrected. I stepped closer, not touching him this time. Just close enough for the space between us to feel intentional. "So what do you want, Ethan?" I asked. For once, he didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was lower. "I want consistency," he said. "No games. No guessing." I nodded slowly. "And in return?" His eyes flicked to me. That ice blue calm again, but thinner now, like something underneath it had started to warm. "In return," he said, "you stop disappearing when things get real." That silence after his words felt heavier than any touch, because I realized something then. Ethan wasn't just trying to understand me. He was trying to keep me from slipping out of reach. And worse, I wasn't sure I wanted to. The wind shifted again, cooler now, threading through the balcony railings like it had somewhere to be. I should have answered him immediately. Instead, I found myself watching Ethan's hands. Still, controlled, not fidgeting, not reaching, like he'd decided a long time ago that wanting things wasn't safe. "I don't disappear on purpose," I said finally. Ethan didn't look at me. "Most people don't." "That's not what I mean." Pause. I leaned my elbows on the railing beside him, keeping just enough distance that it didn't feel like pressure. "It's more like, when things get too direct, I don't know where to stand in it," I admitted. "So I move away, not physically, just out of the moment." Ethan absorbed that without interrupting. That alone felt unusual. Most people filled silence. He didn't. He let it exist. After a while he said, "That's still disappearing." I let out a quiet laugh. "You really like that word." "It's accurate," he repeated. Of course it was. For a while neither of us spoke. Below us, campus life continued like we weren't standing there dismantling something between two people who technically weren't even close. Then Ethan shifted slightly. "Why me?" he asked again. Not harsh, just persistent. Like he needed the answer to behave like something stable in his world. I frowned. "I already told you. It just happened." "That's not an answer." "It is. It's just not a satisfying one." He glanced at me then. "Try again." I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Fine. You want honesty." I asked for it. I hesitated, then went for it. "You're the only person I've been around who doesn't try to fill every silence," I said. "Everyone else reacts to me. You just exist next to me." Ethan's expression tightened slightly. "That's not a good thing," he said. I didn't say it was. Another pause. Then I added quieter. "It just feels easier, like I don't have to perform anything." That made him go still, properly still. Like I'd said something that didn't fit into his expectations of himself. Ethan turned slightly toward me. You think I don't react, he said. I blinked. You don't. Not normally. A beat. Then he said, I'm reacting right now. That made me stop. Because he was right. He wasn't expressionless. He was contained. There was a difference I hadn't bothered to learn until now. A distant clap of thunder rolled somewhere beyond the campus. Ethan looked up briefly at the sky, then back at me. If you stay in this, he said, you need to understand something. My stomach tightened slightly. That sounds ominous. It's not, he said. It's clarity. I waited. Ethan's voice dropped just a fraction. I don't let people get close easily, he said. And when they do, I don't handle uncertainty well. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a you problem. It is. The honesty threw me off more than any warning would have. Then he added, so if you're inconsistent, I will step away. There it was. Not a threat. A rule. I looked at him for a long moment. You're basically giving me terms and conditions. I said. Yes. I laughed once, but it came out softer than intended. And what happens if you step away? Ethan didn't answer immediately. That hesitation again. When he finally spoke, it wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Then this stops. The air felt colder after that. Not because of the weather, because I realized he meant it. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Ethan's eyes shifted slightly toward me. Okay, I repeated. No disappearing. No games. No whatever you think I've been doing. Pause. Then I added. But you don't get to decide everything either. That earned me the faintest change in his expression. Not quite surprise. Not quite approval. Something in between. Ethan turned back toward the horizon. Fair, he said after a moment. The word felt heavier than it should have. Because it meant we were no longer pretending this was accidental. We were negotiating it. Whatever it was. Behind us, the dorm door opened somewhere inside the building, followed by Marcus yelling something about snacks and betrayal. Normal life returning. Ethan didn't move. Neither did I. But the space between us no longer felt like absence. It felt like something that had started to take shape, and neither of us had decided whether to build it or run from it. The next few days changed in ways that were almost irritatingly subtle. Nothing dramatic happened. No confessions. No breakdowns. No sudden emotional revelations in the rain. Just consistency. Ethan showed up at the same time every morning. I didn't accidentally vanish into side corridors anymore. He stopped asking me the same question in different forms. And I stopped treating silence like something I had to escape. It should have felt normal. Instead, it felt like walking on new ground that hadn't decided yet whether it would hold. On the fourth day, Marcus finally noticed. He leaned over his desk, chewing on a snack loudly enough to be a threat. Okay, he said, pointing between us. What is going on with you two? I didn't look up from my notes. Nothing. Ethan, from his side of the room. Everything is stable. Marcus squinted. That sounds like a hostage situation. It isn't, Ethan replied. That's exactly what someone in a hostage situation would say. I sighed. Can you go back to your game addiction and leave us out of your detective arc? Marcus gasped dramatically. So there is something. Ethan didn't even react. Which, unfortunately, made Marcus even more suspicious. Later that evening, Ethan and I ended up in the library again. 5th floor. Same window. Same sunset bleeding orange into glass panels. But this time I didn't sneak glances. Or at least, not as much. Ethan was reading as usual. Focused. Unbothered. Eventually, he spoke without looking up. You're staring. I'm observing, I corrected. That's staring with justification. I huffed a laugh. You're getting better at jokes. I'm not joking. That's worse. He turned a page. Then added, you're more present this week. I blinked. That's your observation? Yes. I leaned back in my chair. Is that good or bad in your scientific opinion? Ethan paused. A rare pause. I don't know yet, he said. Honest again. Always that. The silence settled comfortably after that. Not empty, just shared. At some point my phone buzzed. Once. Then again. I ignored it. Ethan glanced at me. Check it. It's fine. That's avoidance. I narrowed my eyes. Are you my therapist now? No, he said. But I notice things. I muttered. Annoying habit. Still I checked. The message was from the same unknown number. Progress is good. Don't slow down now. Increase physical proximity. My stomach tightened slightly. Ethan noticed immediately. Of course he did. What is it? He asked. I hesitated. Then turned the phone slightly so he could see. His expression didn't change much. But the air around him did. Sharper. Quieter. Who is this? He asked. I told you, I said slowly. It's the person who hired me. Ethan looked back at me. Hired you? I winced. It sounds worse when you say it like that. It is worse when I say it like that. Fair. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Stop responding, he said. I'm not responding. Then stop reading. I didn't know it would escalate like this. He studied me for a long moment, then said something I didn't expect. You're being monitored. That made my stomach drop properly. I'm not in a spy movie, I muttered. Ethan's gaze didn't soften. Then explain why someone is tracking your behavior like an experiment. I didn't have a good answer for that, which was the problem. For once, Ethan closed his book fully. He stood up. I want to see the messages from the beginning, he said. I frowned. Why? Because you're either lying to me, he said, or someone is using you. Pause. Then, quieter. And I need to know which one it is. That landed differently. Not controlling. Not possessive. Just direct. Like a line being drawn under something neither of us could ignore anymore. I slowly handed him my phone. Ethan didn't hesitate. He started scrolling. Silence returned, but heavier this time. Because whatever this was turning into was no longer just about touch, or distance, or proximity. It was starting to look like something that had already involved us both longer than we realized. Ethan didn't scroll quickly. He read, properly. Like each message was a data point that needed to be weighed instead of reacted to. The longer he stayed silent, the worse the air in the library felt. Like the building itself had started listening. Then his thumb stopped, dead still. I saw it immediately. That tiny pause meant he'd found something. What? I asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer right away. He tilted the phone slightly toward the light again. Reread the same message twice. Then locked the screen. When he finally looked at me, his expression had changed. Not angry, not confused. Focused. Dangerously so. This isn't about touch, he said. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Ethan set the phone down between us. One of the earliest messages, he said, mentions your dorm habits, your class schedule, even your part-time work hours. I frowned. That's not weird. I told them. You didn't, he interrupted. Silence. That stopped me cold, because I realized he was right. I hadn't told anyone that level of detail, not even casually. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Someone is observing you independently of your reports. My mouth went dry. So, what are you saying? Ethan's voice dropped. You're not the contractor in this arrangement. A beat. You're the subject. The word didn't land immediately. It hovered first, then sank. Slow, heavy, wrong. I let out a short laugh, but it came out strained. That's insane. Ethan didn't react to the denial. That's the most likely explanation, he said. No. I snapped a little too fast. I agreed to this. There was a contract. Money. Meetings. Everything. Ethan's eyes didn't move away from mine. Did you read the full contract? He asked. That question hit harder than anything else. Because I hadn't. Not really. Not carefully. Not in a way that mattered. The silence stretched. Marcus's noise from somewhere in the building felt like a different universe. Ethan stood up. Come with me, he said. I blinked. Where? Somewhere private, he replied. That's not comforting. It's necessary. I hesitated. Ethan didn't. He picked up my bag from the chair and tossed it to me. A silent command, move. And for once I did. We didn't go back to the dorm. We left campus entirely. Ethan walked fast. Not rushed, but controlled urgency. Like he'd already mapped 3 exits in his head and was just picking the safest one. I had to keep up. Okay, I said between steps. If this is some paranoia spiral. It isn't, he said. How do you know? Because patterns don't lie. That shut me up again. We stopped outside a small, dim internet cafe a few streets off campus. Ethan didn't explain. He just opened a laptop inside, logged into a secured connection faster than any student should reasonably know how to do, and pulled up the files. My contract. The original one. Except, it wasn't original. There were edits, hidden clauses, embedded permissions, lines of text I had never seen before, buried under formatting that required expansion to even reveal. My chest tightened. No, I whispered. That's not. I didn't agree to that. Ethan's voice was flat. Then someone signed for you. A beat. Then he added, quieter. And they've been updating your behavioral targets weekly. My skin went cold. Targets. I repeated. Ethan turned the screen slightly. There were charts, graphs, notes. My name at the top like a file label, not a person. Increase proximity compliance. Test emotional attachment response. Monitor subject dependency formation. I stepped back without realizing it. No, I said again, firmer this time. This is wrong. This has to be fake. Ethan finally looked at me fully. No, he said. This is real. For the first time since I met him, Ethan looked genuinely unsettled. Not by me. Not by proximity. By what was behind it. He closed the laptop slowly, then said something that changed the entire shape of the room. You're not being paid to help me. Pause. You were placed here to see if I would attach to you. Silence dropped like a weight. And I think, he added, eyes sharp now, it's already working. My breath caught, because suddenly, all those moments didn't feel random anymore. Not the card. Not the dorm assignment. Not the convenience of proximity. Not even Ethan's mother. It all felt arranged. Like 2 experiments placed in the same cage and told it was coincidence. I looked at Ethan. For the first time he wasn't the ice king. He wasn't the roommate. He wasn't even the target. He was just another variable realizing he'd been measured. And outside, somewhere beyond the glass, the world suddenly felt a lot less safe than it had this morning. Ethan stood there for a long moment after closing the laptop. No movement. No speech. Just that controlled stillness again. But now it didn't feel like coldness. It felt like restraint. Like something inside him had started running calculations he didn't like the results of. I swallowed. So what now? That was the first real question in the room that mattered. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out and pulled the laptop closer again, reopening it with a few precise keystrokes. I need to verify something, he said. Ethan, I snapped, sharper than I intended. You're acting like this is normal. It's not, he replied. Then stopped typing like it is. That finally made him pause. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he slowly leaned back. A quiet exhale left him, almost controlled enough to miss. You're right, he said. That was new. Ethan Blake didn't concede easily. He closed the laptop fully this time. Not gently, final. Then he looked at me, and something in his expression shifted. Not emotion exactly, but priority. We leave this alone for now, he said. I frowned. Leave it. Yes. That's your solution? Just ignore the fact I might be part of whatever that was. Ethan's eyes sharpened slightly. No, he said. My solution is to stop reacting in a predictable way. I stared at him. That sounds like you're about to do something reckless. It is likely, he agreed. That was not comforting. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, not forceful. Just enough contact to make it real. My brain short-circuited for half a second, old instincts, old rules, but Ethan didn't flinch at my reaction. He just said, walk. I blinked. Where? Somewhere they can't track in real time. That sentence did not help my anxiety. We left the cafe fast. Not running, but not normal either. The streets outside felt louder than before, like the world had turned its volume up without warning. I tried to keep up with Ethan's pace. You're saying someone is watching me right now? Not visually, he said. Digitally. That's supposed to be better? No. That answer came too quickly. We cut through a narrow side street behind a closed market. Ethan finally slowed near a row of shuttered shops. Only then did he release my wrist. The absence of contact felt louder than the contact itself. He pulled out his phone. No cloud sync, he said. No campus network. No shared Wi-Fi. I frowned. You're going off-grid? For now. And what exactly does for now mean in your head? Ethan glanced at me. It means until I understand who benefits from you being near me. That sentence landed heavier than the previous ones, because it implied something worse than surveillance. Intent. A distant rumble of thunder rolled again, closer this time, across my arms. You're making it sound like I'm bait. Ethan didn't deny it. He hated uncertainty, but he didn't soften truth to avoid discomfort. That's one possibility, he said. I let out a sharp breath. Great. Love that for me. He looked at me more directly now. There's another possibility, he added. I waited. His voice dropped slightly. That you were meant to see what happens when I attach to someone. Silence. That one was worse, because it didn't make me a tool in isolation. It made both of us part of something designed to collide. I rubbed my temples. So either I'm bait or you're the experiment. Ethan nodded once. Or both, he said. That made me go quiet. For the first time, there was no easy interpretation left. Just structure without explanation. Ethan turned slightly, scanning the empty street. Then he said, we need to change behavior patterns. I frowned. What does that mean? It means no more predictable proximity cycles, he said. No fixed times. No repeated locations. No routines. I blinked. You're basically describing how to avoid being a human. I'm describing how to avoid being tracked. Pause. Then he added, quieter. And how to see who reacts when patterns break. That part chilled me, because it wasn't defensive. It was investigative. I looked at him carefully. You're going to test them. Ethan didn't deny it. I'm going to test the system, he corrected. I hesitated. And what am I supposed to do? For the first time, something almost like hesitation crossed his face. Then, you stay close, he said. I frowned immediately. That contradicts everything you just said. Yes, that's your plan. Ethan looked at me, and this time his answer was simpler. Yes. The wind picked up between the buildings. Somewhere far away. A phone buzzed, mine, or his, or something we couldn't hear yet. Ethan stepped closer again. Not enough to touch, but enough that the space between us stopped feeling accidental. If this is engineered, he said quietly, then they expect distance to weaken attachment. Pause. So we do. Don't give them distance. My stomach tightened. That sounds like the opposite of safety, I muttered. It is, he agreed. Then after a beat. But it's also how we find out what's real. And for the first time since this started, I couldn't tell whether I was walking into something carefully controlled, or something already too far gone to stop. The next message came before I could even respond. My phone buzzed sharply. Once, twice, then stopped. I looked down instinctively. Ethan did too. No words were needed this time. The timing alone was confirmation. Unscheduled deviation detected. Subject proximity increased outside protocol. Recalibrating. My throat went dry. That's them, I said quietly. Ethan didn't blink. Yes. No surprise. No panic. Just confirmation, like he'd been waiting for the system to reveal itself. Then my phone buzzed again. A second message. Roommate interference recorded. Adjusting variables. Maintain contact. I felt my stomach drop. Maintain contact? I repeated. What does that even mean? Ethan took the phone from my hand. This time he didn't just read. He studied. Like he was staring straight at something staring back. Then he said something that made my skin go cold. They're not just tracking proximity, he said. They're steering it. Before I could ask what he meant, Ethan suddenly grabbed my wrist again. Harder this time. Not painful, but urgent. Walk, he said. Where now? I snapped. Crowded place. That sounds like the opposite of your earlier plan. It is, he said again. Then added. Sharper. They just changed strategy. We moved fast. Too fast. Down the street, into the main road where traffic noise swallowed everything else. People everywhere. Movement. Noise. Phones. Cameras. Ethan didn't slow. I had to almost jog to keep up. Ethan, I said, breath uneven. You're not explaining anything. There's no time, he replied. That was the first time his voice had actually tightened. Not fear. Pressure. We turned into a busy shopping plaza. Bright lights. Loud music. Screens everywhere. Ethan finally stopped near a pillar. He scanned the crowd. Fast. Precise. Then he pulled me slightly closer, not intimate but strategic positioning. I froze. Okay. You're starting to freak me out. Good, he said. That's not comforting. It means you're aware. His phone vibrated again. He didn't even look at it this time. Ignore it, he said. I don't think I can ignore. He cut me off. Don't react. That stopped me, because it wasn't advice. It was instruction. Then, the screen lights around us flickered. Just for a second. Almost nothing. But Ethan's head snapped up immediately. They're nearby, he said. My chest tightened. Who? Ethan's eyes tracked something in the crowd. I don't know, he said honestly. But someone is actively adjusting signals in real time. That should have sounded impossible. But the way he said it made it sound like math. Not theory. Then he did something I didn't expect. He pulled me behind a large digital billboard support beam, out of sight, close enough that the noise softened, close enough that I could hear his breathing now, controlled but not as steady as before. This is no longer passive observation, he said quietly. I stared at him. What does that mean? Ethan finally looked directly at me. It means, he said, they're reacting to us reacting to them. Pause. Then the line that changed everything. And I just confirmed they don't like when I don't follow emotional probability. I blinked. Emotional what? Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. They expected me to distance myself when uncertainty increased, he said. That's the default pattern for me. I frowned. And you didn't. No. Another beat. I stayed close. Silence hit, because I understood it then. This wasn't just surveillance. It was behavioral prediction. And Ethan had just broken the model. A notification flashed on my phone again. Ethan didn't let me look. He grabbed it immediately. His eyes scanned it once. Then his expression changed. Subtle, but sharp enough to feel like the air dropped temperature. They escalated, he said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. How? Ethan handed me the phone. This time, the message wasn't instructions. It was a warning. Subject instability increasing. Initiating direct contact protocol. I looked up slowly. What does direct contact protocol mean? Ethan made my ears. And for the first time since this started, he didn't answer immediately, because he didn't like the answer. Then he said it anyway. It means they're about to introduce someone who can physically intervene in our proximity. The moment he said it, the noise of the plaza didn't feel like noise anymore. Felt like cover, like something hiding inside it. I swallowed. Physically intervene. As in, what? Someone comes and drags me away? Ethan's eyes were already scanning again. Fast, controlled, or separates us, or replaces me in the structure. Replaces you? I repeated. That landed wrong. Ethan didn't answer right away. That silence was worse than denial. Then he said, if this is a controlled attachment experiment, then I'm not irreplaceable in their model. Pause. But proximity is required. My stomach tightened. So I'm just a variable in a math problem to them. No, Ethan said immediately. That was the fastest he'd responded all day. That alone made me look at him harder. He exhaled once, sharp. You're the fixed point, he said. I'm the test condition. Before I could process that, a man in a gray hoodie walked past the far end of the corridor behind the billboard structure. Too slow, too deliberate. Not looking at us but not looking either. Ethan's posture shifted instantly. Not obvious, but locked. I noticed anyway. What? I whispered. Ethan didn't take his eyes off the corridor. Don't move. I'm not moving, I hissed. The man paused near a vending machine. Didn't buy anything. Just stood there. Still. Too still. Ethan leaned slightly closer. Not touching, but close enough that his voice wouldn't carry. That's not a random passerby, he said. My pulse jumped. How do you know? Because he's waiting for confirmation, Ethan replied. For what? Ethan's jaw tightened. For whether we separate. Silence. That one sentence made everything feel tighter. He's following us. I know, Ethan said. Then do something. I am. That didn't help. What are you doing? I demanded. Ethan didn't look at me. I'm confirming something, he said. Now is not the time for science experiments. This isn't science, he replied. A beat. This is pattern recognition. We turned sharply into a narrow alley between two storefronts. Less people, less noise, more control. The follower didn't hesitate. He turned in too. Ethan stopped suddenly. So did I. The alley was dead quiet compared to the plaza. Just the hum of distant traffic and flickering light above. The man in the hoodie stopped at the entrance. Didn't come closer. Just stood there, waiting. Ethan spoke without turning around. Here, he said quietly. I frowned. Here what? This is the separation threshold, he said. My chest tightened. Ethan, stop talking in riddles. He finally turned to me, and for the first time since this started, his expression wasn't calm. It was decided. If I step away, he said. He moves in. My stomach dropped. And if I don't? I asked. Ethan looked past me at the alley entrance, then back at me. Then we forced their model to fail in real time. A pause. His voice lowered. Stay close. I hesitated. Just 1 second too long. And Ethan saw it. Something changed in his expression. Not anger. Something sharper. Understanding. Because he realized what hesitation meant in their system. It meant validation. The man at the entrance shifted forward. 1 step. Ethan reacted instantly. He closed the distance between us. Not gently. Not casually. Purposefully. And for the first time, he pulled me into full contact. Not experimental. Not accidental. Intentional. My breath caught. Not from shock alone. From the sudden realization that this wasn't part of any arrangement anymore. Ethan's voice came low against my ear. Don't think, he said. Just stay. The man in the hoodie stopped immediately, as if waiting. Then, his phone buzzed. And from Ethan's grip on my arm, I felt it. A shift. Like something somewhere had just registered an outcome it didn't expect. Ethan exhaled slowly. Good, he murmured. I blinked. Good. He didn't let go. No separation response, he said. They didn't trigger intervention escalation. I looked up at him. You're telling me this was a test? Ethan finally met my eyes. Yes, he said. A pause. Then, quieter. And we just broke it. Behind us, the man in the hoodie turned away. Left. Gone. Like he had never been there at all. But Ethan still didn't release me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure whether that was part of the test, or something he had stopped pretending was one. The alley didn't feel like it had gotten quieter. Felt like it had stopped listening. Ethan still hadn't let go. That was the first thing I noticed when the man disappeared. The second thing was that my brain finally caught up to what had just happened. You said test. I whispered. Like, you were testing me? Ethan's grip didn't tighten, but it didn't loosen either. Yes, he said simply. I pulled back slightly this time. He allowed it. Not resisting. Not chasing. Just watching. That's insane, I said. People don't test someone in real time like that. They do, Ethan replied. When the system is adaptive. I stared at him. Stop saying system like that makes it normal. It doesn't need to be normal, he said. It needs to be consistent. That word again. Consistent. Like it was the only thing holding him together. A distant siren echoed somewhere beyond the alley. Not close, but enough to remind me the world still existed outside this narrow space. I swallowed. So what now? You proved your point? The model failed? Or whatever? Ethan finally released my arm. Slowly, like he was recalibrating distance. No, he said. We didn't prove anything yet. My stomach dropped a little again. That's not reassuring. It's honest. He leaned back against the wall, scanning the alley entrance once more before speaking again. They reacted to physical proximity stabilizing instead of breaking, he said. That means they weren't only measuring distance avoidance. I frowned. Then what were they measuring? Ethan looked at me directly. Choice, he said. Pause. And how long you hesitate before staying. That hit differently. Not as manipulation, as evaluation. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So every time I hesitate, they learn something? Yes. And every time I stay, they learn something too? Yes. I let out a slow breath. So I can't win. Ethan's eyes flickered slightly. That depends on what you think winning is. Silence stretched again. This one heavier, less panicked, more structural. Like something had shifted into place and neither of us liked the shape it made. I looked at him carefully. You knew this would happen. Ethan didn't deny it immediately. That was answer enough. I suspected escalation, he said finally. Not full deployment. Full deployment of what? Ethan hesitated. Then, external behavioral correction. My throat tightened. That sounds like a euphemism for something illegal. It usually is, he said. I pushed off the wall. Okay, so let me get this straight. Ethan watched me carefully. I ticked it off in my head. I was placed in your life to see if you form attachment. Yes. And you were monitored to see if you resist or comply. Yes. And now because you didn't behave predictably, someone sent an actual person to intervene. Ethan nodded once. I exhaled sharply. That is completely unhinged. Yes, he agreed. That calm agreement was almost worse than denial. A beat passed. Then I asked the question I didn't want to. Why me? Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at me longer this time. Not analyzing. Not calculating. Just focusing. I don't know yet, he said. That honesty again. Always precise. Always incomplete. My phone buzzed again. Both of us looked at it this time. Ethan didn't stop me. He just said quietly, read it. I hesitated. Then opened it. Containment stability improving. Continue proximity reinforcement. Subject pairing is effective. My fingers went cold. Containment. I repeated quietly. Ethan nodded once. That's the word I didn't want to see, he said. I looked up at him. Why? Because now his expression had changed again. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Like something he'd only ever considered as theory had just confirmed itself in practice. Because, Ethan said slowly, it means we're not participants. Pause. We're infrastructure. For the first time, I felt the weight of that properly. Not as metaphor, as design. The alley suddenly felt too small again. Ethan pushed off the wall. We need to stop reacting in public spaces, he said. I blinked. We literally just survived an intervention attempt. Yes, he said. And that means they're escalating faster than expected. He looked at me. Which means we stop giving them clean data. I frowned. And how do we do that? Ethan paused. Then very quietly, we stop being predictable in any direction. A beat. Then he added, starting now. The streetlight flickered once above us as we stepped out of the alley. Nothing happened. No immediate response. No sudden intervention. No follow-up message. Just a night. Ethan stopped for half a second, scanning the street. Then he said, they're recalibrating. I frowned. That's your answer for everything now? It's the correct one, he replied. We started walking. Not fast. Not slow. Just forward. My phone stayed silent. That silence felt louder than the buzzing from before. I glanced at Ethan. So what, we just wait for the next move? No, he said. We don't wait. Then what? We break sequence. We reached the dorm building. The entrance felt normal again. Too normal. Like nothing had happened in the last hour. Marcus was somewhere inside shouting at a game. Life pretending it wasn't structured. Ethan pushed the door open. We went in. Inside, he stopped in the middle of the hallway. Looked at me. This is where they expect routine to resume, he said. I nodded slowly. And we don't let it. Ethan stepped closer. Close enough that it wasn't accidental anymore. We change variables, he said. I didn't move away. Like what? Ethan held my gaze. Like this, he said. Then he grabbed my wrist again. Not gently this time. Firm. Intentional. And pulled me toward his room. The door shut behind us. Click. No crowd. No street. No observer. Just the two of us in a sealed space. Ethan released my wrist. Finally, he turned the lock. Then looked at me. This is where they lose clean data, he said. Across my arms. Or where things get worse. Ethan nodded once. Yes. Pause. Then he added. But it's also where we decide what this actually is. No more system talk. No more guessing outside. Just here. Now. And whatever came next.